Good evening, everybody. Happy Wednesday, and welcome to Bible study. So, this Bible study is going to be a little different. I'm not going to be doing a live, as you may have heard. So, I'm so thankful that you guys tuned in. So, still going to be the same old me, same old structure. Except for this time, I'm not going to do the soap method just because I'm going to try to dissect within an hour or less. um, the story of Ruth, and I'm not going to touch on more so Ruth and Boaz, but more so focusing on Ruth to show you the favor that God had on her life. And so that's what this is all about. Today's topic is going to be God's favor and God's grace, the grace that He showed Ruth through being loyal to Naomi, which got her where she's at. So without further ado, let's get started. So, like I said, I'm going to try to go from chapter 1 through chapter 4 within an hour. So, you guys bear with me. But you may hear me flowing through my pages. Make sure I got my Bible. Okay. Okay, so let's dive in. I cannot wait, you guys. I cannot wait. I was sitting by myself doing Bible study the other night and just spending time with God. And I read this. Something let me hear. And it's crazy because before I get into it, I want to give a backstory. So I originally, and if you hear my son's lullaby music, just tune it out because he's sleeping and I don't need him to get up. Any little thing, he gets up. He hear my voice, he gets up. So I have to leave that one. But the other night I was sitting and I was going to read about David. I was going to go to the part where it talked about David and how Samuel was sent to go anoint one of Jesse's sons, but he didn't know who it was. And so he assumed that it was one of the ones that was in the room. But however, we know that, excuse me, or if you're familiar with the story, you know that David was out tending to the sheep. And so Jesse sends for him, or Samuel sends for him, and he comes and God shows him that this is the person. And so I was going to read about that, but then I prayed and I said, Lord, I don't really have anywhere where I want to jump. Other than that, I was like, but I don't even know why I want to start it. I said, so, lead me wherever you want me to go. And so I opened my Bible. I looked at the time and it was 8:28. So you all, Romans 8:28, all things work together. And so I was reminded when I read this story that in the end, it breaks down David's gene line, like his gene line, and like the fathers and everything. And so I was like, wow, it makes sense because some people may think like, oh, Ruth and Boaz, just another love story. But not only was it a love story, more so per se, but it was also just God's favor because this was an appointed time, just like Esther, this was an appointed time for something that God had put in place to do what it is that happened in the Bible. Because, and the reason I say that is because Ruth and Boaz was the parents of Obed, right? And Obed was the father to Jesse. Jesse was the father to David. Huh? Right. So if there was no Ruth and Boaz, there would be no David. There would be no Jesse. Obviously, it would be some other names, or God would have used somebody else. But it just lets you know that everything happens for a reason and all things work together. So even though Ruth endured suffering and pain and affliction to get to where she got to, it was a blessing. And sometimes that's like you and it's like me. We go through things and we think that it's the end, and God shows up in the nick of the hour with such an abundant blessing for us that we weren't even expecting. And I said, even when I was in my prayer time, I was like, I'm pretty sure Ruth wasn't expecting to jump into another marriage that fast. I'm pretty sure she wasn't thinking that her life would change in a matter of seconds because in Ruth, there's only 4 chapters, but it goes so quick. And I'm going to give you context about that. And so I don't know what you're believing God for. I don't know what God is going to do in your life, but just know that when God gets to moving and when it comes to pass, it's going to be so fast. It's going to be swiftly. It's going to be quick and sudden, and you're not going to even know. It's going to happen in a flash. So, just giving you guys some context. So, we're going to start in the beginning, of course. So, in chapter 1, looking at Ruth's loyalty to Naomi. So, starting in verse 6. And you guys bear with me because you may hear me or see me like panting because I asthma, child, but it ain't stopping nothing, okay? Because I gotta get this done. So let's breathe. Let's invite the Holy Spirit in. Holy Spirit, we ask you to come in. Lord, please dissect this message as many ways as you need it to for each and every person to hear it and let it speak to their heart about their situation. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. Let's get started. Okay. Woo. Okay, so starting in 6, it says, she and her daughters in law set out to return from the territory of Moab because she had heard in Moab that the Lord had paid attention to his people's need by providing them food. And so I want to kind of stop right there. And this is why I started here because I noticed that we have to remember that everything happens for a reason. So you have to look at the context. So Naomi has suffered the loss of her husband and her two sons. She's with these two daughter-in-laws who are widows. They're all widows. The three widows. She lost her husband. She lost her son. They lost, their husband. So you have three widows. So they're all pretty much just going through it, just bearing pain, right? Because they just lost a husband, father-in-law, and everything. So it says that she and her daughters in law set out to return from the territory of Moab because she had heard in Moab that the Lord had paid attention to his people's need by providing them food. So she was leaving one place to return back to a place where she knew God was. And so I thought this was important to start from because if you read through, and I'll get to that in a second, but just give me context. If you read through once she makes it there, like they're so excited to see her. They're like overfilled with joy. And she's like, she's bitter. Like she had this bitter, taste in her mouth because she's also two sons. She's also her husband, and she feels like God has turned his hand over on her. And so I thought this was a good place to start because even in the midst of her feeling like, okay, I'm upset with God, right? Even her in the midst of her feeling like, oh, God has left me. He's abandoning me. And I have these two daughter-in-laws, but I can't make them happy because I'm too old in age to bear kids. And even if I do bear another child, they're not gonna, wait around for me, those kids to be raised up for them to be of age. You know what I'm saying? So um Naomi goes back to a place where she knows the Lord is providing food, providing provision for this place. So she returns because she knows God is there. And sometimes you got to leave a place, leave a mindset, leave a friend group, leave a job, leave a whatever you fill in the blank. But sometimes you have to leave that place to go where you know God's presence is. And I'm not saying that God is not everywhere because he is surely all around. But if you feel led to leave somewhere, even like I said, it could be something as simple as a mindset, right? So if you feel led to leave, get up and go. Okay. So I thought that was important to start from because you see that even in her affliction, even in her pain, she's still trusting God, even though she's upset, she's bitter, she's mad, she's angry with God, but she goes to a place where she knows God is at. And I would think that she still had some kind of hope. So she said, I'm going to leave this place that caused me bitterness and I'm going to go back and get into the presence of God. And I thought that was so profound because in our pain and in our affliction, sometimes we feel like, oh, I'm just going to sit here and sit in my misery and it's not going to get better from here. And um, so forth and so forth. But she decided to leave her and her daughters-in-law. And so that's what we're starting at. So looking at 7, she left the place where she had been living, accompanied by her two daughters-in-law, and traveled along the road leading back to the road of Judah. Naomi said to them, each of you go back to your mother's home. May the Lord show kindness to you as you have shown to the dead and to me. May the Lord grant each of you rest in the house of a new husband. She kissed them and they wept loudly. They said to her, we insist on returning with you to your people. But Naomi replied, return home, my daughters. Why do you want to go with me? Am I able to have any more sons who could become your husbands? Return home, my daughters. Go on, for I am too old to have another husband. Even if I thought there was still hope for me to have a husband tonight and to bear sons, will you be willing to wait for them to grow? Would you restrain yourselves from remarrying? No, my daughters, my life is too bitter for you to share because the Lord's hand has turned against me. Again, they wept loudly, and Orpah kissed her mother in law, but Ruth clung to her. Naomi said, look, your sister in law has gone back to her people and to her gods. Follow your sister in law. And so, again, I thought this was a wonderful place to start because it shows Ruth's loyalty to Naomi, because I'm pretty sure she's going through the same things that Naomi is going through, right? She's going through many of things. She's off her husband. She's they're all weeping, they're all going through sorrow and loss. And so um the one daughter-in-law is like, "Oh, I want to stay with you," or whatever, and she ends up leaving, because I guess she kind of realized like, "Okay, yeah, you telling the truth. You don't really, And I thought it was important because she said, your sister-in-law has gone back to her people and her gods, and so in this, Naomi was letting her know, like, go back to the way you used to live, go back to the life you're used to, because I couldn't bring you a happier life. I've caused you pain. The Lord has caused me pain. We're all in pain. So just go back to your life. I'm sure it was better than what is going on now. And Naomi insists that she leaves, and Ruth is like, no. And I thought, and I kept putting emphasis on the word but and look, because when there's a but, just like when they say but God, when there is a but, that there is something going on there. There is something that it's just like, but God, but Ruth, but Naomi, right? So you have to realize that Naomi wanted her to leave, but in the midst of that, Ruth clung to her because, for one, I'm pretty sure she probably felt like, okay, this lady needs me. And two, regardless of what I used to have, the joy and maybe, the life that I have here is better than what I'm used to having. And so Ruth replies, where in verse 16, "Don't plead with me to abandon you or to return and not follow you. For wherever you go, I will go. And wherever you live, I will live. Your people will be my people, and your God will be my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord punish me and do so severely if anything but death separates you and me." That's some loyalty right there. And I was so fond of Ruth because of her willing to remain, her willing to stay despite the affliction that she's going through, despite the fact that she's lost her husband, she's lost a brother-in-law, she's lost a father-in-law, and now she's in these group of women who are communicating through trauma. They're bound through trauma because they're all bitter and they're all going through something. But Ruth decides, you know what? No, I can't go back to the life I used to live because I no longer even fit in that place. I no longer serve those guys. I no longer even know what it's like to be in that place. So I'd rather sit here and be bitter with you than to go back to serving what doesn't no longer serve me. I thought that was really good because it lets you know that she was so curious about God. Like, and that's why I said it's not really more so about Ruth and Boaz is what I'm speaking of. I'm talking about Ruth herself. She watched Naomi and she saw the favor that God had on Naomi, the light that she shed. And even now, in the midst of her affliction, in the middle of her pain, she still trusts in God despite the fact that she is upset with God, despite the fact that she does feel like God has turned his hand on her, she's still holding on to her God. She's leaving a place where it caused her bitterness and affliction, and she's going back to a place where she knows the presence of God is there. That is powerful, and that says a lot. And that spoke to me because I remember just being in a place where I felt hopeless and I felt lost. And oftentimes we run away from God. We are, what was her name? Orpah? Was the daughter-in-law named Oprah? Yeah, Orpah. So it's like we are Oprah, or I was about to say Oprah. We are Orpah in these situations. We run away from God back to what serves us, back to what makes us feel good. And in this moment, Ruth made a decision. She wasn't forced to stay with Naomi. There wasn't no ties to Naomi because her husband is dead. Her son-in-law is, or her mother-in-law's son is dead. She doesn't have any kids. So it's like she don't have anything tying her to Naomi but the presence of God. Okay. And I thought that was so good because that lets you know that God saw this too. And that's why he honored her and he blessed her because she wanted to stick by Naomi because of the God. If you listen, she says, "I will go and wherever you live, I will live. Your people will be my people and your God will be my God." So she's saying, I don't want to go back to what I used to know. I don't want to go back serving those false gods and those idols and living life like I don't have God because I may not know God 100% for myself, but I know him through you. I see him in you. I can see him even I can sit here and read that yes, she's hurting and yes, she's in pain, but Naomi still has a heart for God. She ran back to the very place she knew God was, and she felt like God had left her where she was. So she left that place and went and got to where she felt like God was. That says a lot about Naomi. And so that's why I said Ruth is a bad girl, y'all. Ruth bad. She's bad, okay? You be a Ruth, okay? Be bad out here. Stick to be loyal like that to God, to people that really serve God and have a heart for God. And that's why it's so important to go out in the world and shine your light, to be the light of the world. Because when you have that light on you, people will naturally want to be attracted to you and they want to know who God is through you. But it's also important for them to have their own relationship with God. And you see that in the end, that Ruth is so favored, that but she knows that she's blessed by God. And she not only does she inherit a husband and a child and a life, kinsman redeemer. She, restores joy to her mother-in-law, but she also gets to get that relationship with God, and that's the most important thing. Because if it weren't for her chasing after Naomi because of her life, God would have never blessed her this way. I'm telling you. And that's why I said all things work together. It doesn't matter what it looks like today. Your tomorrow shapes your today, but don't get stuck in yesterday that you can't see what God is doing in your life today. Allow today to be today and show up the way that you need to show up so that you can go and get in God's presence. And this is why I love this story so much. Outside of Boaz and Ruth, I love Ruth on its own because she shows you what a true woman of integrity is, a true woman of respect is. And even Boaz recognized her the way that she clung. She didn't have any ties to Naomi. But because she had a thirst for God, because she said, you know what, I've been around this lady long enough to know that even through this, she's still, and like I said, you can see it's in the text, she's still running after God, even when she's upset with God, even when she's mad at God. So that's for me, and that's for you. When you feel like God has given up on you, you don't have to run away from him. Run to him and allow him to do a work in you. Okay? And so moving on along, heading over to about to be in chapter 2, but ending in verse 1. So this part is where they make it to Bethlehem. They traveled until they came to Bethlehem, and when they got to Bethlehem, people were greeting them, and they were so excited, so filled with joy. And Naomi's like bitter, and she's like, "Oh, change my name, call me Mara because I'm bitter." And so, jumping down to verse 20, it says, "Don't call me Naomi, call me Mara." She answered, "For the Almighty has made me very bitter. I went away full, but the Lord has brought me back empty. Why do you call me Naomi? Since the Lord has opposed me and the Almighty has afflicted me." And so she goes back into the territory of Moab with her daughter-in-law Ruth, the Moabites. They arrived at Bethlehem at the beginning of the barley harvest. And I thought that was important too. They returned in harvest season, right? Like, isn't it just like God to give a harvest when it's harvest season? You're reaping seeds that you planted and you're reaping the harvest from it. You're getting what you put out because you were faithful to Naomi. God was faithful to Ruth through Boaz. You listen. You better get faithful, and not just for what you can get from God, but just because you want to have that earning that relationship with God. You want to have it, and so if nothing else leads you there, let this be the staple. Because this lady clung to the city when she didn't have to, but because she had that thirst, that urgent, it's like, oh, yeah, I know you're going through it right now, but I've seen you on your best days. I've seen you worshiping God. And you got to know that if she says, I'm going to worship your God over my false gods, you got to know that God's name holds weight. God, she's seen God move in her life a million and one ways. So now she says, you know what? I'm going to go and I'm going to figure out who this God is and I'm going to serve him. I'm going to worship him. I'm going to praise him. I'm going to show favor to his name. And I think that's wonderful because not only was she a woman of integrity and respect, but other people around her respected her too because of her loyalty to Naomi, but ultimately to God. Okay, so stay loyal to the right person. Question your loyalty. Who are you loyal to? And if it's not God, let's do some hard work. So moving right along. So moving right along to chapter 2, where it starts off where Ruth and Boaz meet. So starting in verse 1, it says, Now Naomi had a relative on her husband's side. He was a prominent man of noble character from Elimelech's family. His name was Boaz. Ruth the Moabitess asked Naomi, "Will you let me go into the fields and gather fallen grain behind someone whom I find favor?" Naomi answered her, "Go ahead, my daughter." And so she goes and she enters and she finds favor in Boaz's eyes, and he gives her like amazing favor and grace. And um Boaz ends up seeing her and he asks like who woman is that? Like who is that? What, and he recognizes her and asks these questions about her, and he knows about, how she's been faithful to Naomi. And so he goes over and tells her like, eat with my servants, have what we have, be one with us, even though technically you're not one of us. And so he shows her unusual favor. And it's crazy because that's what she said. "Will you let me go into the fields and gather fallen grain behind someone whom I found favor?" And it just was in her favor, that she found favor with Boaz, his new redeemer. Okay, there you go. So she fell down face down, jumping down to verse 10. This is chapter 2, verse 10. She fell down face down, bowed to the ground, and said to him, "Why have I found favor with you, so that you notice me, although I am a foreigner?" Boaz answered her, "Everything you have done for your mother in law since your husband's death has been fully reported to me." Mm, come on. Let me tell you something. When you go to a person who don't know you, but they know everything about you, you got to know that God is mentioning your name somewhere, somehow to them. Somebody that knows somebody that knows somebody that told somebody about you. Listen, that's what happened with Ruth. Everybody knew what happened. She lost her husband, she lost her brother-in-law, she lost her father-in-law, and Orpah left, but Ruth stayed by Naomi, stayed dedicated to Naomi, and people found favor with her because they're like, dang, that's mad respect. You a woman of integrity. And so it's just in her favor. It's just in her favor that this man already knows about this woman. He asked, who is that? Who woman is that? And so when they say her name, because you got to remember, when you following God, baby, your name carries weight, okay? And people gonna be talking. And the person that needs to get to you with the resources and the provision that God has for you is gonna come. And when they get to you, they're gonna already know about you. You ain't gotta write a resume. You ain't gotta tell them about you because they already know. They done did their homework. They got everything they need, and that's why they're coming to you with the provision. And we see that literally here. And so I just thought that was good because he says, "Listen, I got the numbers on you, boo. Like, I got your numbers, baby." Y'all. But let me get serious. So, but jumping back down to 11, it says, Boaz answered her. Y'all so silly. Boaz answered her, "Everything you have done for your mother in law since your husband's death has been fully reported to me." Fully reported to me, right? Fully. That means I know everything. Not a detail has been left out. I know everything about you. And so he goes into detail. He says how you left your father and your mother and your native land, and how you came to a people you didn't previously know. May the Lord reward you for what you have done, and may you receive a full reward from the Lord God of Israel, under whose wings you have come for refuge. Listen, not only do this man know about her, but he gives her a report about her. Like, this is what people are saying about you. You did this, this, and this, and you found favor in my eyes, and I know you found favor in God's eyes. And so, because of your faithfulness to Naomi, I'm gonna be faithful to you, and you are one of us, even though you're not from here. Like she said, how can I find favor in your eyes when I'm not even from here? I don't even know who you are, but this man know who she is. Nobody but God. Nobody but God. And you gotta know when God tells you to go, how she would have, went back to her old place, you know, who knows how the story would have ended. But because God's hand was in the midst of it, she decided to stick with Naomi through everything, even the pain, the affliction, the many tears. I'm pretty sure she cried with Naomi about her father-in-law and about her husband and about her son-in-law. I'm pretty sure they're more together, they weep together. They're going through the same thing, so they can only relate to each other. And so through that, Ruth says, "You know what? I'm still gonna stick with you." Ruth bad, y'all. That's a bad girl. Let me tell you something. She's bad. And so running over to 13, it says, "My Lord," she said, "I have found favor with you, for you have comforted and encouraged your servant. Although I am not like one of your female servants." Let me tell you something. You're one of a kind. Mm-hmm. Naomi was one of a kind. She didn't look like the other workers. She didn't look like she belonged. She looked like a foreigner. She knew she was a foreigner. They knew she was a foreigner, but because God's favor was on her, God allowed her to fit right in. She didn't look the part, but she was stood up for the job. She applied for the job and she got it. Nothing but favor. When God's grace is on your life, it don't matter what you look like. It don't matter who's saying what about you, because God knows what you do. God knows your name. He knows the report that you give. You don't have to go to him with a resume because he already knows. He will send people to let you know. Like, let me tell y'all something. When I first started doing my ministry and stuff, it was people like I would see people out or like just people in general who would just be like, oh, I saw your YouTube or I saw this or I saw that. And I'm like, you did? Like, I didn't even know you was watching. Like, and I say all the time, it don't matter how many views you get, it don't matter how many comments you get, how many likes, just know people know. Okay, people see the work that you're doing. So don't ever give up. Continue to do and be faithful with the little that God has given you because it doesn't matter how many people come. You're not here to please man, you're here to please God. And that is what Ruth is a symbol of. She wanted to know more about God, so she stuck with a person that could lead her to the right person. And that's for you and that's for me. Continue to be faithful and do not get weary in well doing. Continue to do what God has called you to do and be bold in it. I don't care if it's one person, two people, three people, four people, no people. Red fish, blue fish, yellow fish. Be faithful to God. Be loyal because God will never fail you. And so, dropping down to 19, it says, her mother in law said to her, where did you gather barley today? And where did you work? May the Lord bless the man who noticed you. Ruth told her mother in law, whom she had worked with, and said, the name of the man I worked with today is Boaz. Then Naomi said to her daughter in law, may the Lord bless him because he has not abandoned his kindness to the living or the dead. Naomi continued, the man is a close relative. He is one of our family redeemers. Jumping down to chapter 3, Ruth appealed to Boaz. Ruth's mother in law, Naomi, said to her, my daughter, shouldn't I find rest for you so that you will be taken care of? Now, isn't Boaz our relative? Haven't you been working with his female servants? This evening he will be wandering barley on the threshing floor. Wash, put on perfume, and wear your best clothes. Go down to the threshing floor, but don't let the man know you are there until he has finished eating and drinking. I highlighted this because it reminded me of Joseph. When Joseph got called to go interpret Pharaoh's dream, he cleaned himself up, he shaved, he changed his clothes, and he was ready to go be presented to Pharaoh. And that was the moment that changed his life. And so when God tells you to wash, put on perfume, and change into your best clothes, you go and you do exactly what God tells you to do because in that moment when you go, your life gonna change for the better. We've seen it several times. Like, and I remember, because I just put a message out about Joseph, and in the message, that was one of the parts that I talked about how he cleaned up because you never know when it's gonna be your moment. You never know what's waiting on the other side of your obedience. So when God tells you somebody's coming to you or you're about to go, you get prepared. You wait, you keep watching, and when your name is called, you stand up, you go boldly, and you do what God tells you to do. Okay, and that's exactly what Ruth did. And so um, Ruth tells her, I'll do everything you say. Whatever you say, I'll do. And so at midnight, Boaz was startled, turned over, and there lying at his feet was a woman. So he asked, who are you? I am Ruth, your servant, she replied. Take me under your wing, for you are a family redeemer. Then he said, may the Lord bless you, my daughter. You have shown more kindness now than before, because you have not pursued younger men, whether rich or poor. Now don't be afraid, my daughter. I will do for you whatever you say, since all the people in my town know that you are a woman of noble character. Yes, it is true that I am a family redeemer, but there is a redeemer closer than I am. Stay here tonight, and in the morning, if he wants to redeem you, that's good. Let him redeem you. But if he doesn't want to redeem you, as the Lord lives, I will. Now lie down until morning. Let me tell you something. First of all, I highlighted that this was 8 through 13 is where I was just reading from. Chapter 3, verse 8 through 13. Let me tell you something. At midnight, I've been saying this the whole time in the midnight hour. In the middle of it, God is going to help you and your provision meet in the middle. God is going to bring whatever it is that He has for you. God's in the middle of it. He's going to get that thing to you. And when it comes, listen, you may be afraid, you may be worried, you may be anxious, but do not be afraid. And we have to remember how many times that is listed in the Bible. Do not be anxious, do not be afraid, do not argue. Go and be of good spirit. And he tells her, he gives her advice on what to do. And even, if this other person wants to redeem her, do not be afraid. Let him redeem you. Good. But if not, baby girl, I got you. And I'm pretty sure he was leaning more towards the, baby girl, I got you. Like, you shown such favor, you shown such, and you gotta think like this was basically because I did some research about this, and I remember having a conversation with one of my friends about it, about the part where she submitted to his feet, and I said, well, do you really think that? Um, y'all gotta forgive my thing because it's kind of lagging like every time I move from my computer, so bear with it. Hopefully, it's not like making my words jumble, but I told her, I said, well, do you think that when she went to his feet, she really uncovered his feet? And so we kind of went back and forth about it. And so we started talking about it, and then I kept reading. And I said, yeah. I was like, because at one point when I used to read, I was like, feet means something else. But then I read it and I said, okay, she uncovered him. It was basically like she was kind of giving him like a marriage proposal, like letting him know, like, listen, I'm interested. I'm appealing myself to you. If you're interested, be my kinsman redeemer. So it's like you gotta think as a woman, it takes a lot of humility, to do that, to basically propose, not propose, but just let this man know, like, listen, I want you to be my kinsman redeemer. I've already found favor in your eyes. I'm here, I'm humble, I'm respected, and he admires her even more. So that's why I say I feel like he was leaning more towards the, baby girl, I got you. Because if this man will step up, I'm gonna step up. And then you also see that Boaz had an urgency. Like he like, okay, listen, I got you. If this man ain't got you, I got you, and we'll settle this in the morning. But tonight, lay down and get some rest because don't you worry, I got you. And isn't that just like God? When we sitting up at night, going back and forth, rocking back and forth, flipping through pages, trying to find this, trying to find that, God is in the middle, and He's like, get some rest because in the morning comes joy. You may reap tears of sorrow at night, but in the morning, it's gonna be all right. Okay, you gotta know that God is the answer to every problem you have. And even if the answer don't come when you want it, just know that it's coming. And even if the answer shows up looking like something else, trust God enough to know that He got your back. Baby girl, it's gonna be all right. Okay. And that's basically what Boaz was telling her, like, listen, don't worry, because you know how sometimes people say stuff and they sleep on it and they think about it. No, Boaz said, listen, I'm gonna go to this man who closer to me. We gonna see what he say. If he's saying it's up in the air, then it's up in the air. But if it's down out here and he ain't doing nothing, I got you. And he was sudden. That's why I said this lets you know how fast things went. Boom. They was in mourning. They left. Went back to her hometown. Naomi done changed her name. Ruth done went and found favor in Boaz's eyes. Then she went and appealed herself to Boaz. Then Boaz went and asked this man, listen, you want her or not? I'm gonna get her. If you don't want her, he got her. They married. They had a son, and then hope and joy was restored to Naomi. That's the whole chapter. You see how sudden God is a God of swiftly, man. He's a God of suddenly, but you may have to go through some things to get there. And sometimes people be saying, the Ruth and Boaz stuff, but you gotta know what it takes to be a Ruth. You gotta know what a Ruth embarks on. She lost a husband. You know how much pain that man brought her? And then you with your mother-in-law, she's mourning, your sister-in-law, she mourning. So we all mourning together. We all just trauma bonded. Like you gotta know that they went through some pain. But look at how God took that pain and that affliction. Again, it reminds me of Joseph when Joseph had them kids and he named a daughter after I forgot what the name was, but one of them was God has made me forget my affliction and God has made me forget my family. So the things that happened to Joseph, he no longer remembered because God was so good and gracious. He blessed him and favored him even through the trials. You gotta know that in the stretching, God got you. He pulling you back to shoot you forward, but you gotta stay loyal to him, stay faithful to him, and he will come and redeem you. Mm-hmm. And so I thought this was good stuff. I listen, Boaz, he was on it. Like he was ready. He was like, listen, this is what we're gonna do. And that's exactly what he did. He got up, he saw the man, he called to the man, they sat down, and they it was the other what was it, 10 elders, they sat down, they hashed it out, and the man said, listen, I can't accept this because if I accept it, I'm gonna ruin my own inheritance. So Boaz ended up stepping up. He said, y'all are my witness. He took that sandal, and it was a sealed deal. Signed, sealed, delivered. Mm-hmm. um, I also highlighted in verse 18, Naomi said, my daughter, wait until you find out how things go, for he won't rest unless he solves this to date. And so I thought that was good because Naomi, she laid there, she rested, but she woke up early in the morning and left out so nobody could see her. And she ended up taking like some food back to Naomi, and Naomi asked him like, my child, what happened? What happened? So she's telling him, probably all excited. And so or maybe she was worried, you never know. And so Naomi tells her, let's just wait until it all plays out. But I know Boaz, he's a man of integrity. If he said he gonna handle it, he gonna handle it. And that's what you see in verse 18. She says, wait until you find out how things go, for he won't rest unless he solves this today. You gotta know that God is a today God. Even if the answer ain't to you today, it's already been solved today. So when the appointed time comes in that day, it's gonna get to you. God ain't waiting later to do what he can do today. He's already promised it to you. It's coming. You just have to be loyal and faithful and stick by him, regardless of what you see. Don't get all excited and then when it don't come, you disappointed. Don't get all disappointed and then it comes and then you can't really be excited because you didn't really posture your mind about it. Stay faithful. So I thought it was good. And so jumping down in chapter 4. So Ruth and Boaz, they end up being married. Like I said, yeah, he ended up getting the land and getting Naomi, and Naomi's land and everything that belongs to her son. And then he ends up, redeeming Ruth, because the other guy couldn't do it. His inheritance like forfeited him, and that's nobody but God. Come on. And so that's what you see in chapter 4 in the beginning. Um, like I said, he ended up redeeming it and then turn it over to verse 9. That just goes to talk about how they were witnesses. The elders was witness that, he was now the property owner of the land and of Ruth. And so jumping down to 13. So we're in chapter 4, verse 13. Boaz took Ruth and she became his wife. He slept with her, and the Lord granted conception on her, and she gave birth to a son. The woman said to Naomi, blessed be the Lord who has not left you without a family, Redeemer today. May his name become well known in Israel. He will renew your life and sustain you in your old age. Indeed, your daughter in law who loves you is better to you than 7 sons. Mm. Has given birth to him. Naomi took the child, placed him on her lap, and became a mother to him. The neighbor woman said, a son has been born to Naomi, and they named him Obed. He was the father of Jesse, the father of David. And let me tell you why God put that in there, okay? Because it's important. Because if it wasn't Ruth and it wasn't Boaz, there would be no Obed. There would be no Jesse. There would be no David. That's why that's in there, because he wants you to know. If it were meant for her to be with the other kings and redeemer, she would have been with the kings and redeemer. He would have claimed her. If it was meant for her to end up with her husband and have a son, it would have been that way. But because that wasn't God's will, because he needed a David to go out there and sling that slingshot to hit that Goliath, he needed a Jesse so that Samuel can go down to his house and anoint David. Come on now. He needed a Solomon to bear a Boaz so that he could be a keeper redeemer to Ruth. I think that's his name. Simon was the father of Boaz. Yep. He needed a Simon who fathered Boaz. Boaz fathered Obed. Obed fathered Jesse. Jesse fathered David. Tell me God ain't good. Tell me one time that God ain't good. And I love this because not only do you see that everything, all things, and I wrote right here a Romans 8:28 moment, all things work together. All things work together. Yes, you lost your husband. Yes, you lost your father-in-law. Yes, you lost your brother-in-law. But look at what God gives. He's giving you joy. He's not only restoring your joy in your life and bless you with inheritance from a kinsman redeemer who cares for you, respects you. And this man said he'll do anything she wants him to do. Let me go back because see, don't make me out of a liar. Mm-hmm. Where it said, may the Lord bless you, my daughter. You have shown more kindness now than before because you have not pursued younger men rich or poor. Now don't be afraid, my daughter. I will do for you whatever you say. Since all the people in my town, excuse me, know that you are a woman of noble character. The whole city knows Ruth is the bomb.com, okay? And Boaz got to be with the bomb.com, okay? So because he respected her, she was respected. He respected her diligently because of what she did. And so They don't went out here and had a respectable baby, Obed, who fathered Jesse, who fathered David. And my thing is lagging, so don't worry about it. Just listen to me. Hopefully, it's not marbled up. But I just thought this was so good because, like I said, in the ending, you see that the lady even tells her like God has bore you a son. You lost two sons, but your two sons that you lost and your husband that you lost don't even compare. Come on, Romans 8:18. What you lost don't compare to what's coming. Okay? Let that thing go. Mourn it, cry, leave that place of affliction, leave that place of bitterness so that God can walk you into these new doors of abundance, into your kinsman redeemer, into your provision, into the abundance that God has for you. Because it's okay to mourn, it's okay to sit around with people who understand what you're going through. But sometimes you got to be what was her name? Orpah. You got to be an Orpah and leave and go back to what you know. Or you could be a Ruth. You could get to a new place and do the unusual, perceive a new thing that God is doing. Because I'm pretty sure this lady had no clue that her life was going to turn around this fast for the good. She's still mourning her husband. She's still mourning her father-in-law, her brother-in-law. But God said, you know what? That's okay. You shed those tears, baby girl, because it's gonna be all right. You cry those tears tonight, and in the morning you're gonna have a keys and redeemer. Later on, y'all gonna get married, have a baby. Naomi gonna be restored because what does it say? He will renew your life and sustain you in your old age. Indeed, your daughter-in-law who loves you. And we know that Naomi and Ruth have a very strong relationship, and Ruth has a matterable respect for her because she did not leave her when Ruth knew she needed her the most. Not only did she not leave her, but she didn't leave her because she knew God was connected to her, and Ruth wanted to know who God was for herself. So she stuck around for God. But she loved Naomi through it. You gotta see that this lady love her. You ain't gonna go back to your own family. You gonna stay with your mother-in-law when you ain't got no time for her. Yeah, you love that lady. You love her, but they tell her, um, your one daughter-in-law is better than having seven sons. That's how much and great Ruth's love was for Naomi. And that's how much and great really her love was for God because Naomi shed so much light. She was a light for Ruth. Like, what? And because God showed favor to Naomi, Ruth followed Naomi and God favored her. Look at that. Like, let me tell you something. Listen, it all works together for the good of those. Okay, it all works together. And like I said, she lost her sons, but now she has a grandson. But she mothered him. She loves him like her own because she don't have her own anymore. So not only does this baby is gonna feel so loved because this lady knows what it's like to lose a son. She knows what it's like to lose two sons. So you know this baby's gonna be loved. Then Obed, he grew up, got married, had Jesse. Jesse grew up, whatever, had David. Now David out there with the slingshot, slaying giants. All because a widow decided to follow God. All because one major change, one major decision can change your life for the good or for the worse. You decide. But in those decisions, you have to remember that God's grace is definitely efficient enough for you. It's overfilled. There's no such thing as too much grace. God is forever graceful. I know myself. And so when I read this, I was just like, ooh, my goodness. And in verse 18 to 22, it breaks down David's um genealogy from Judah's son. So it starts from Perez and ends with David. And that's just some of the people from the Bible. Okay. It started with Adam and Eve. Like, what? I pray that you get so close with God that you don't ever stop chasing after him. That you don't ever stop choosing him. Because the moment you decide to go all in for God or stick to somebody that's all in, God will go all in for you. And he will blow your mind. Y'all gotta help me because I'm gonna lose it. I'm gonna cry. But he will help you through it. Like what? I'm a living proof of that. Like God will get you through anything, and He will surprise you with so many things that you didn't even know was coming. And some of the things, if He trusts you with them, He will reveal secrets of the kingdom, and He will reveal things that He haven't planned for. Some things He leaves as a surprise, and it's gonna knock your socks off because you love Him so much, and His love is so much greater. And that's why I love this story. Outside of Ruth and Boaz, I love Ruth alone because she is a woman who was respected enough, noble enough. She had a love for just a love of something that she had never even experienced for real. She didn't have a relationship with God until Naomi. So you gotta know that you impact people. Like, sorry. Oh, you impact people. Like you have an impact. And your impact is greater than you think. I don't care where you impact the people at. People notice you. People see you. You're seen. You're heard. Your faith, your story, it matters. It matters. So don't go walking through thinking that God has left you. And like I said, this is also this is a double win. Like Ruth got blessed and saved, and she was able to restore love back to Naomi, but Naomi also continued to let go of the bitterness and just know that even things worked out for her. Yeah, I lost my husband, I lost my two sons, but God has given me a daughter-in-law that loves me beyond this, beyond measure, and a grandson that now I can love because I know what it's like to lose love, a loved one. I know what it's like to lose a son and a husband. So now I can love on him beyond measure. So you got to know that the test and the trial that come in your life, they're to teach you. They're going to teach you whatever you need to learn for whatever is coming for you. I know you may not want to hear that, but that's what it is. Like in a nutshell, that's really what it is. God is preparing you for everything. The pain, the tears, the sleepless night. It's all gonna make sense in the end, and we see that because if there was no Ruth and Boaz, there would be no Jesse, there would be no David. But God's plans never fail. And so, to apply this to our lives, we can just continue to be graceful, to have grace over ourselves, to give extend grace to other people, and love on the people that God has given us, the right people. Because there are some people where God is going to call you from them, or and they're not. Let me clarify this because God won't always call you away from just bad people. It could be good people too, but if they're not meant to go where you're going, they're not going to go. And if you keep holding on to them, you're going to prolong your blessing. That's just that. And so you have to be obedient to say, you know what, God, I release it. And it may not be that these people are bad. They could be good people, but they may not be good enough to go where you're going. And that's okay because we don't get to qualify people good or bad. God does. And when God speaks to you about doing something, be obedient and go. And make sure that when you go, you are presenting yourself well because you don't know how where you're going is going to change your life. And so just continue to have faith and stand with God and have a loyalty check. Check your heart. Ask yourself, who am I loyal to? I remember, I'm gonna say this last thing and I'm gonna go because I don't even know how long this is. But I remember when I put in my resignation for my job and one of my old coworkers, he asked me had I changed my mind about my resignation? And I said, no, I'm not changing my mind. I said, God spoke. I'm moving on his behalf, and that's that. Like I don't owe anybody an explanation. I'm not asking anybody for anything. This is what I'm doing, and you can't change my mind. And so he asked me. He said, well, then you have to check your loyalty. You have to see who you're loyal to. And I told him, I said, I'm loyal to the kingdom. Who are you loyal to? And he said, I'm loyal to the company. And I said, well, good for you. And I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. If that's where your loyalty lies, then be true to who you are. But I'm gonna be true to where I am. And it for me, it was a test to see would I leave everything that I have to go where God is calling me. And I answered the call and said yes. My loyalty lies with God because God is forever loyal. God's gonna love me through everything more than a company can, more than a friend can. God's gonna be there. He knows what I need and when I need it. My loyalty lies with God. So stick with God the same way Ruth stuck with Naomi because he will not fail you. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. Continue to enjoy your June. I will be returning soon. But I hope you guys enjoyed this. Continue to share, like, comment, and let me know how this bless you. Bye.